Security is when we want to ensure that whatever we are communicating, it is not public, it's not visible to others, it is not interceptable by others. This is a general definition. We want to feel, yes, okay, uh, whatever we are talking, whatever we are conversing, that is not available to anybody without our permission. So there are no risks involved. So same definition, we are extending it to network security. Basically, in a network, we have different entities which are connected, different devices which are connected. So whenever a device A, it wants to communicate with another device B, so they have to ensure that whatever they are communicating in between, whatever their information exchange or the data exchange is taking place, that is not visible or it is not available to any unauthorized person, or nobody is able to eavesdrop on that communication or on that information exchange or intercept it without their prior permission. So with that, we come to a formal definition of security, which says security, it is to prevent, deter, detect, and if possible, correct the security violations when the information is transmitted. This is a formal definition of security which comes from the Williams-Stallings. Okay. Next, there are different types of security when we talk of exchanging information in the network. So broadly, they can be divided into network security, computer security, and data security. Network security means that transmission is our focus, that ever when we are transmitting information between two ends, there we have to ensure the secure transmission. So here the emphasis is on authorization, authentication, maintaining the confidentiality of the data, integrity of the data, and even to ensure that with the authorized access, the authorized users are at least able to use that particular service or the information exchange. Okay. So broadly, three uh, core objectives, the core principles of network security are defined as confidentiality, integrity, and availability. We'll just see after this what are these. And there are number of security attacks from which we have to make our communication or the information exchange between the two ends or multiple users in a network secure. Okay. Different security mechanisms, ways are there to implement it, and the different kinds of attacks which are there. Okay. So next type of security we can talk about is computer security. So computer security means it is about your device. It's your computer, your PC, your mobile, the terminal itself, the communicating device itself. So it is about securing the information and resources of the user which is there on the network. So here, rather than security attacks, it is more of the threats coming in the form of the malware, because here your hardware as well as your files which are contained in your device, they are at risk. Okay. And it is also known as cybersecurity. And finally, we come to data security. Data security is overlapping with both network and computer, because in both cases, we are actually transfer or we are exchanging data only. Okay. So the focus of the subject would be network security. Coming to that, I already told there are three basic principles, that is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. When I say confidential, it means क्या? That सिर्फ authorized users, मतलब मेरी जो information exchange है वो confidential होनी चाहिए. If I'm talking to a user B, if I'm talking to a friend B, only she or he should be able to overhear or talk to me or have access to that information of the file which I am sharing. It should not be available to anybody and everybody in the network which they are connected. So the network, we can have different devices which are connected. Suppose we are using Wi-Fi and we are actually replying to an email. So it means being connected to a Wi-Fi doesn't mean that my reply or whatever I am doing, my activity has to be available to every user which is there on that. It should only be between the between what I am, and the information is going to a secure end, to an authorized end, to which I am authenticating. I am choosing to share the information or give the information. If I'm putting a password or an OTP, that is not accessible to anybody there who is already there in the network. Okay. Next is the integrity. Integrity means for the lifetime of the data for which it exists, there should be no accidental or the unwanted modification of data. That refers both to the accuracy as well as the completeness. Completeness means अगर मैंने cryptography word share किया है तो cryptography ही होना चाहिए. Cryptography is not lost over the time, or it is not reached as a part of my message. That should not happen anymore. Accuracy means मेरे data की कोई भी modification नहीं होना चाहिए. Whatever I want to communicate, that should be very clear. It should not be, if I say I'm coming today, if somebody changes it to I'm not coming today, so it means there has been modification. That should not be there. So मेरे data की integrity maintain रहनी चाहिए. उसको कोई modify नहीं कर सके without the permission of the users which are actually communicating. And finally is the availability. Availability का मतलब है कि okay, we are having a mechanism to authorize and authenticate who all are having access, but then we have to make sure कि हमारा जो security mechanism है is such that at least my authorized users, they are having access to my service or to that information exchange or to that facility without any disruption. Okay, they are not deprived of the information. For example, sometimes you may be having this error that you are logging in and then it says, Gmail says, okay, temporarily unavailable. You are an authorized user. You have already having a legal account on uh, Gmail, Google, mail services. But then why are you getting that? That may be due to the flooding of ingenuine requests coming on that particular path, which is a way in which we can implement the denial of service. मतलब हम सर्विस को डिनाई कर सकते हैं किसी ऑथराइज यूजर को, क्योंकि हम सर्वर को एक इतनी ज्यादा रिक्वेस्ट वी आर सेंडिंग that it's not able to differentiate which is authorized and unauthorized. Its upper limit is reached, and in this process unauthorized may be getting access but authorized वाले को access नहीं मिलेगा. And these three properties, they are referring to data as well as the services which are being used in the network. Okay. In addition to these three, we also have we also have authenticity and authorization. So these five in all, they are required to complete the network security services required for secure communication in a network. Further, my confidentiality, it can be broken into data confidentiality or the privacy of the users who are participating. That is, एक तो मेरा data confidential है. दूसरा, जो information collect हो रही है, if I'm logging in, if I'm giving a password or an OTP for authenticating the user to enter, जैसे Zoom की मीटिंग है, normally अगर हम देखते हैं कि Zoom को जिसके पास भी लिंक है दे कैन ज्वाइन, बट अगर मैं उनको एक पासकोड शेयर करती हूँ, जिसके पास वो पासकोड है वही उसको एक्सेस कर सकता है, इनेबल इट. सो इन दैट केस व्हाट हैपेंस इज दैट जो मेरी इंफॉर्मेशन कलेक्ट हो रही है, आई एम टेकिंग सम इंफॉर्मेशन ऑफ सम यूजर, ओके, उसका नाम मे बी, और आई एम collecting the organization in which it is working, or maybe I've even connected from the email source, email जिससे वो connect हो रहे हैं, that should also remain confidential. So that also comes under confidentiality. Okay. Similarly, on integrity also can be broken into data integrity as well as the system integrity. Data integrity का मतलब है कि वही मेरा data accurate रहना चाहिए. My data should not be unintentionally modified, okay, by any unauthorized user. And similarly, my system also. My system should not be having some downloads, some changes which are unintentional. Okay, because we are connected to a network. So we are not receiving some information which is changing my system, operating system, or it's some mechanism, and I'm putting some downloads or some unknown apps coming into my mobile phone without my permission. So that is also integrity. So with these, now we move next. How can we actually prevent? Now this is an overview, though this will be detailed further. ब्रॉडली हम कॉन्फिडेंशियल जब रखना चाहते हैं तो हम इनक्रिप्ट करते हैं. वेरी कॉमन आई थिंक पीपल आर इंटरेस्टेड इन नेटवर्क सिक्योरिटी, दे वुड बी नोइंग व्हाट इज इंक्रिप्शन. इंक्रिप्शन का मतलब है मैं अपने डेटा को किसी तरह से कोड कर दे रही हैं so that it becomes unintelligible or it is not clearly a user friendly language information. Suppose I am saying hello, how are you, can be converted into a series of symbols or numbers, okay, so which may not be deciphered by a common person. Generally इसके लिए हमें की चाहिए होती है, मतलब मेरा कोई लॉजिक बिहाइंड होता है, देयर इज सम लॉजिक बाय व्हिच आई एम चेंजिंग द डेटा एंड कोडिंग द डेटा, और वही लॉजिक मुझे यूज करना होता है फॉर डिकोडिंग द डेटा एट द रिसीविंग एंड. Another aspect to ensure the confidentiality is access control, जो लिमिट करता है that okay, who all can access this service or this data or this communication or this meeting, whatever you say. So we are trying to control the access. That may be through use of OTPs, through the sharing of passwords. That can be through some keys, different ways, depending upon what kind of service we are talking about. We'll elaborate on this also in the next lecture. Another aspect to this confidentiality is authentication. That how we are ensuring that, okay, that this user is a authentic user. Suppose we are actually, we require a sign-in. For most of the services, there is a sign-in. जितनी भी apps है, कुछ है तो हमें sign in करना पड़ता है. तो उसके बाद they give you a verification also. So before even coming to a service which is freely available on web, they also want to authenticate, because जहाँ अगर मैं अपना Gmail use कर रही हूँ और मैं उससे verify कर रही हूँ, it means Gmail is having some data based on which it thinks that I am a genuine user. Okay, so this is one way of authenticating. Next we come to is techniques to ensure integrity. Integrity का मतलब है I have to ensure that my data is not modified unintentionally. So in this, first thing is hashing. Hashing is different from encryption in the way that hashing is irreversible, though we'll dive deep into this later. But broadly, I just like to tell you that hashing भी होता क्या है. ऐसा नहीं है कि like in encryption, we are giving a key to convert it into a encrypted or the encoded message. And when it goes to the receiver, there also that same key is used to decipher the data. No. Here we are obviously we are encoding the data using some mathematical function known as the hash function, but it is irreversible, means I'm not passing on that key to the receiver. Rather, the mechanism is that I fix a length of the data which has to be shared, and in that fixed length data, since my message is always varying and my hash key is generally smaller, so what I do is we set a mix of that generally, and if it is the correct user will be able to separate out that data or the message from the encrypted one. So how it is done, that we'll definitely see later. But as of now, you have to understand that, okay, it cannot be reversed. There is no key sharing mechanism used in that. Okay, mathematical function is used at the transmitting end, which converts it into a smaller key generally. So it is beneficial that it is encoding the data definitely, or maintaining one part, which is the same role done by encryption. So apart from that, it is authenticating the person, because that person is able to decipher that without the help of the key. He is having some information from which It is able to retrieve your message, so that authenticates it also. And it is used, this is the one of the most common ways to save the passwords, save the digital signatures, because it is irreversible. And since it is a smaller key, it is efficient also in the terms of memory usage. And generally, there is a hashing table which has to be maintained against the list of passwords of the users or the sensitive information that we are using. Okay. Definitely, we'll come back to it later. Digital signatures, again, they solve the purpose of what hashing is doing, that is maintaining the authenticity as well as the integrity. Integrity we understand because signature means something which is unique. So only if I'm giving it to the correct person, I'm sharing my information that is there, and authentic because it is protected under something, a stamp which is individual to every person or the user. Okay, so signature would be unique to any authentic user which would be there. Okay. Then we have checksums also. Checksum, simplest example of this is your Hamming code, in which we try to check that whatever has been sent, is it received in the same order. Checksum errors are there. Hamming code is one, parity is another way to do that. So different ways to implement it. And finally, we have availability. Availability को prevent करने के लिए मतलब I want कि whatever are by authorized users उनको वो service का access मिले, उनको access मिले. It is like you are having a big show and you have sold out the limited tickets, but you want to ensure now that जो जिनकी limited, yes, obviously because it is a big show, it is an open, so you can expect that some unauthorized people can jump in spite of the tight security and bounces there at the venue. But you at least want to ensure that a legal or a person who has actually purchased the ticket to that person is not denied entry because seats are full. That is the exact scenario. Okay. So इसको हम इंश्योर करने के लिए क्या करते हैं, redundancy. That is, if I have 100, I've sold out 100 tickets, I have to ensure at least I have some scope of variation of accommodating 3 or 5 more people in case we have such cases. So redundancy is there so that we do not miss out on the service to a valid or the authorized user. Okay. Disaster recovery. In case that service is not provided to that, or it is server has crashed down. For example, आपका कोई service है, there is an online test which happened with the physics वाला also. There is an online when he first started. So there was a capacity of like he expected around 30-40,000, but the opposition or the other coaching center which was in direct competition with them, the physics wala's setup, they told everybody number of the users or through their server they tried to log in register on that site so that 40,000 was actually elevated to 80,000. So server was not able to accommodate those kind of requests, that heavy traffic in that time when the registration or the click had to happen, joining of the link had to happen. So there was a server crash. So that was one example where the availability of the service was denied. Okay. And the very common example of this is denial of service. मतलब हमें वो सर्विस नहीं मिलती एक ऑथराइज यूजर को. सो इसका पहला ऑप्शन है कि आपको कुछ स्कोप ऑफ मार्जिन यू हैव टू keep for the extras so that in case there is some, you have to make your system fault tolerant. If some failure happens, you have some backup. Next is disaster recovery. Yes, are you able to implement some repair or the recovery mechanism in case how soon can you come up with the restoration of the services? Then next is you have to protect yourself against flooding of traffic on the server. So this is done through DDoS, that is distributed denial of service attacks. One way is using load balancers, using firewalls, using the rate limiters, or limiting the number of requests per unit time on your server. So these are the different ways in which it can be implemented. Next we come to is Aspects of the security. We have three aspects of the security, that is security attacks. How we can actually, what ways are there in which our system security can be compromised. Then we have the mechanisms, how we can make a system secure. So वो tools, first I like to define the services. Services मतलब मेरे पास क्या सर्विसेज है, क्या यूज, क्या अवेलेबिलिटी है, सो दैट आई कैन प्रोटेक्ट माय सिस्टम. एंड वो सर्विसेज जिस मैकेनिज्म से इम्प्लीमेंट हो रही है उसको आई विल से सिक्योरिटी मैकेनिज्म्स. सो आई कैन से दैट tools and techniques used to implement a particular service are known as security mechanism. Security services means, yes, I have authentication, I can ensure that the data will remain confidential. I can ensure that every user will be an authorized user on the network. I can ensure that no non-repudiation should be happening on my network. What is repudiation? Repudiation is, suppose तुम्हारी बैंकिंग की सर्विस है, अब कभी कभी फ्रॉड्स के अंदर या स्कैम्स के अंदर बैंकिंग पर्सनल उसका लॉगिन रिक्वायर्ड होता है, उनका स्मार्ट कार्ड के थ्रू ही उनका सिस्टम खुलता है. So that is one way of ensuring that yes, login is there. They cannot deny that, okay, there was no involvement of the bank. They cannot deny. The communicating party cannot deny. That could be either the sender or the receiver. So, वो एक तरह की security service है. So, how they are implemented? They may be implemented through OTPs. They may be implemented through biometrics. They can be implemented through your passwords. They can be implemented through firewalls. They can be implemented through encryption, through hashing, whatever. So these are the mechanisms and services: authenticating the user, authorizing the user. Mechanism is using OTP, using digital signature, using a biometric authentication, and so on. So we are clear on this. Next we come to is network security threats या attacks क्या होते हैं. Broadly, की classification is there. We'll come to that. But what is a threat? Threat is basically which is a potential attack. There are chances of getting attacked, but it is only a security violation. You may or may not be affected by that. Attack is something which definitely has done the harm. Okay. So, जो malware है, that is a threat. Your system, depending upon that, you have used that file, you have triggered it using a file, you have used that harmful service, whether it is installed in your system, that is what kind of मतलब किस तरह का नुकसान हमारे सिस्टम को हो सकता है. अटैक का मतलब है अटैक हो गया, denial of service. You are not, it is not that you have downloaded something wrong. You are trying to log into a application as a valid user, but because their server was attacked, you have been denied the service. Similarly, most of the network attacks, security attacks, they come into men of middle attacks because आपके ट्रांसमिशन के ड्यूरेशन में समथिंग some interception has happened. What is the extent or the harm of that interception? That may lead to further classification, but broadly they are the men in the middle attacks. Phishing is when you are having a service which is appearing to be legal or legitimate, but basically it is collecting your data or an illegal access to your information. We'll again, by end of this lecture, elaborate on that. Then we come to the classification of security attacks.